Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Orbis Paranormal. We are here waiting on one host and one guest, which should be big time fun. And we're on.
She clicked the wrong link. I think she said it was counting down. She got to click the StreamYard link.
Oh yes, I didn't send her the.
I didn't.
Yeah, I sent her the StreamYard link. All right, we clicked the wrong link. We'll be back in a second. Two, and we're here.
Hi.
How you doing, Irena? So good to see you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
We're very happy to have you here.
Great.
So let me do a little intro, and then you can dive right in.
Okay.
I won't go through all 50 pages of the biography. Irena has an amazing biography. So Irena got her Ph.D. from the College of Veterinary Medicine in the University of Missouri. She then did post-doctoral work at Cornell, had a professorship at Bonaventure, and then got a BS from Ohio State in astronomy and biology, and on research and teaching at Ohio State University College of Medicine. And then the DIA, the Defense Intelligence Agency, employed her PhD level research in satellite photography, including the Air Order of Battle section of its Photographic Interpretation Office. So if we have an adversary, she would look at the photos of their airfields and tell us everything about their airplanes, how they fed them, how they took care of them. That was an important mission. And so she was in top secret sensitive compartmented information clearances. She was employed as a physical scientist cartographer at what is now known as the National Geospatial-Intelligence Agency. It was the mapping agency before that. So anyway, using satellite photography, because NGA uses some of the satellites that NRO puts up. So she was an astronomer at Ohio State and used the big ear. So she's been doing radio astronomy and done some SETI work. But for the UFO people, in case you don't remember or don't know, she served on the MUFON board of directors from 1993 to 2000 and is a consultant in physiology and astronomy and a experiencer research team consultant. She was a founding member of the Mid-Ohio Research Associates. And this goes on, but you get the idea. Irena is a superstar, and we are happy to have her.
Well, I don't know about that, but I'm very glad to be here.
We're very glad to have you. I've wanted to have a conversation, a long talk with you for a while. And so before we just dive into you, tell us about some of the stuff you want to tell us about the background. I understand you have a recent incident you'd like to tell us about.
That's what I wanted to talk about. I'm not an authority on this. And I don't know much about it, but I just had something weird happen. And I saw your video with Anthony S. Ampler.
Yeah. Anthony's here. He is here. This is Anthony right here. So Irena's talking about you, Anthony.
Well, I don't know that much about drones. I've been watching the shows, and it seems like they pick out ones that aren't drones and say, well, these are all wrong and things. But I have a drone of my own, and I haven't been flying it much. And I also have flight radar 24. And there's a lot of airports around, so I kind of watch the airplanes. And if I see one that doesn't register on flight radar, well, oftentimes I'll report it. I know they have them turned off and things. But something pretty unusual happened on the 12th of this month. And I probably shouldn't say anything about it because I don't know that much about it. But what happened is that I was in the house here and I heard a helicopter go over. It didn't sound quite normal. And so I grabbed found my phone and and got it turned on and everything, went out and looked around to see if I could find it. Well, it turned out to be pretty close to right above me. There's trees around, I didn't see it. So I managed to get a film of it. Then I looked it up on my flight radar, and it was a Robinson helicopter, which is an interesting helicopter. The blades are up on a pedestal over the body and things like that. And so I thought this was interesting, and I forgot about it for quite a number of hours. And then the picture that I saw on my phone just suddenly flashed into my mind, and I realized that usually with flight radar, if an airplane takes off at an airport and it flies around, lands in another airport, well, it has a trail and it shows it from this airport to that airport. Well, I happened to look at my flight radar on this, and its trail started right above me and went on, and I'd photographed it going on, but I wondered why on earth it would start right above me because no helicopter took off from here.
Let me ask you a question. So you got a video of it?
Yeah,
Okay, and it was right above your tree?
It was about 1,600 feet.
Oh, that's a little high. Yeah, so it's a common thing being seen in Maryland and New Jersey and those places for things to come over and go right over people's houses and sound like helicopters and look like helicopters, but have no flight radar and zero rotor wash.
Well,
Right over the house and zero disturbance below it.
I've seen those before too. Real low helicopters don't seem to register on flight radar, but this was different because it registered, but it just showed it starting right where I was and continuing.
Wow.
It did not show it coming from anywhere, so it was like it just took off from my house.
Yes.
And so I put a video on YouTube, the whole thing of all the traces. They didn't turn out very well, but you can see them. Would you? I just put it on not very long ago. But anyway, so I wondered what on earth happened because that made no sense.
I'm sorry, Irena, did you put it on Facebook?
I put it on YouTube.
YouTube, okay. What is your channel?
McCammon Farms.
Okay, we'll find it. Okay, well, I have to have it. Okay.
My latest title is Drones, UAP, and Aircraft Are in the News. One, a UAP, can a UAP transform into an aircraft is what I.
And well, my son, who lives in New Jersey, saw a looking at the side of a craft with was illuminated. He knew it was the side because it wasn't coming at him; it was going perpendicular to his line of sight, and he watched it transform from the orb into a something that looked like an airplane.
Okay, I got the video of the helicopter going over, and I got the trace. I took 2 photographs of my of the flight radar showing the flight path that started on me and continued on. But it took me a few hours to realize there was anything odd about that. And finally, I realized it. So what I did next was I used the backtrack part of the flight radar. And I show that in my video, but what happened is that it showed, I put it on for that time and place and everything. And it showed a helicopter going toward my position. And it just about got there. And suddenly another helicopter just appeared about 2 miles away. And it showed both of them. The other helicopter was coming toward my place. The first helicopter seemed to hover over my place, and then it backed up. And the other helicopter was coming toward it. And then the other it came back to where my place was, and the other helicopter went around it. And then the other helicopter kept on going, and the first helicopter went a little ways and just disappeared. And that was pretty weird because I've been watching flight radar for several years, and this did not look normal at all.
Yeah, I got so into it. I have a little computer with a television monitor and a Raspberry Pi, and it puts all the aircraft on the screen, so I can just take a quick look. So we had the following incident. We were on our deck chit-chatting, and we did our little viewing, find something in the sky, didn't find anything, so we went in after it got darker late or whatever. She noticed that there were videos. And so let's take 3 videos in a row. The first video, we were talking, snapping flashes, whatever. The middle video, we were silent, but the helicopter that flew over our head wasn't. And I mean, right over our head. And the third video after the helicopter, we were talking and flashing again. So we had not left the deck. We have zero memory of the helicopter. I went on flight radar and the helicopter was not registered. Missing time and an unregistered helicopter. I'm not sure that was a helicopter.
Well, that's what I wondered. I put it as a title that did a UAP turn into a helicopter and then make the real helicopter disappear? Because that's what actually was shown on flight radar.
Yep. Every time I've ever seen a craft or a strange orb, there's always been a dark colored helicopter right next to it, following it or something, putting a spotlight on it. And I've always found that to be strange. I didn't know that they did that. You know what I mean? So it's very interesting, actually.
Okay, Irena, do me a favor and spell the name of your YouTube channel.
McCammon, McCammon.
Okay, that's what we needed. We were spelling it wrong.
Okay, I have two of them on, and they're pretty close to the same name, McCammon Creek Farms, and this will be the very first one that shows.
All right, 1 second. I got to remember how to type.
McCammon, Creek Farms.
And there we are.
Is the first one show a helicopter?
And it says drones, UAP, and aircraft in the news.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay. All right, hang on 1 second, and we're there. I got to share it, and then it'll be up.
Okay.
This is exciting.
It is. I'm glad you got a new thing. That's great.
Because I'm never fast enough to videotape anything I see, so this is great.
All right,
Okay.
let's make it full size. Let me make it full screen. And you can talk while it's playing.
Well, there's a helicopter that I videotaped. It's a Robinson with the blade on top. Then next, I looked at the transponder data, and there was no flight path before this. I don't know if you can see it very well, but it starts right on my position and goes south. And I
see the trace going mostly down, but a little to the right. I see it.
Can you slow it down a little then?
I can indeed.
Yeah.
I'll pause it. You tell me when to go forward. Hang on a minute. Let me back up.
Yeah.
All
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. I made a couple of.
Hang on a minute. I let it go again, unfortunately. Let me all right. So right here is the track.
Yeah, that's the track I got. And it didn't sink in at first for maybe 6 hours. This was pretty odd. But I finally realized that the track began right on my position, which is the blue dot, and continued. There wasn't a track before that, which is pretty weird. And so I wondered why it would start right where I was and continue, and there wouldn't be a track of it leaving the airport and wherever, because it certainly didn't take off from over my head. So you can go on now.
Yep. So the transponder showed it had no previous flight path, but then a UFO or object.
Yeah, then I backtracked on my flight radar, and you can go on.
Okay.
Okay. So
right,
anyway,
here. What do you got here?
Okay, I went back to that time and date, and it shows a helicopter approaching my position. I'm the blue dot.
Got it.
And so you can let it go then.
Okay.
It's flying around. It's approaching my position.
Yeah, we can see that.
Yeah. And so I assume that's a helicopter that approached me. Then it continued, and you can stop there in a second.
Well, that's right over you.
Okay. then you see there's another helicopter
Oh, yeah,
that just
I
suddenly
know.
appeared. And so it's coming toward that one. That
Well,
one,
that's not nearly side by side.
well, actually it backed up. It's hovered and then it backed up. The first one did. And then the second one went around it.
Wow.
And then
That's
the first,
amazing. They were interested in looking at you.
well, then the second one disappeared. And
I see it disappeared. Yeah, it's like it turned its ADS-B off or literally disappeared.
yeah. And the ones that suddenly appeared took its place.
Oh, that's so weird.
Yeah, I thought that was really, really weird.
That's odd. That's really odd. So, and this is Flight Radar 24. Yeah, you can click on it. I'm assuming you have premium membership, so you can click on it and learn if it filed a flight plan.
Yeah, the flight plan was for the first helicopter. And
oh my goodness.
it showed a flight plan. It showed the flight track and everything. But then you couldn't see it too well, but they didn't have the same flight plan at all, because the original one looked like it hovered over my house, then it backed up.
And disappeared.
Then it went forward again. Then the other one went around it, and they went together for a while, and then it disappeared.
But did you observe them together?
No.
That's odd.
Because I was in the house at the time. I just heard something that didn't sound right, and I had to find my phone, and then I had to get some other things and go out, and then I had to look around, find the helicopter, and finally I found it. So I got a picture of it flying away, but I didn't have time to get anything else.
Okay.
I mean, I didn't. But
all right. So do we go ahead?
Yeah.
Okay.
But you can't see.
This is really odd.
You can't see it very well on this, but that one first, let's see, it backed up.
Yeah. Oh, I see. Both of them went right over your house.
Yeah.
One of them stopped and disappeared. The other one keeps going.
Yeah, the one that suddenly appeared, kept going, and that's why it showed the flight classes starting right over my house.
But it's so odd that one of them just disappears off of ADS-B. It's really amazing.
Yeah. That's the real helicopter, and that's the other helicopter. And it shows them both. And it showed the one going around the other one. It changed its position a little bit, went around it. But the first one, it appeared to stop over my house, hover, then back up. The other one was just coming toward it. So they didn't have the same flight path at all.
What flight path did Flight Radar 24 attribute to real helicopter?
Well, I considered that the real helicopter. I don't know which is the real helicopter. The real helicopter is the one with the flight path. It took off from Port Columbus, or John Glenn Airport in Columbus, an international airport, and had a flight plan going up to, I didn't show the whole flight plan, but it went around the town and came back, and then it was the one that was coming toward me.
So me sitting back as with some interest in military flight and surveillance activities, this is like one was tasked to go find the other.
Well,
and see if they could see it.
Well, the one just disappeared. I mean, just appeared, and then the one with the flight path disappeared, and the other one took its place.
That's so weird, so odd.
That's what I thought. I'm glad somebody thinks so too.
No, that's just. I mean, ADS-B is a unique transmission tied to a serial number given to the airplane, so it's really odd.
Yeah.
And for it to go off, especially that close to the ADS-B receivers at the airports, they had to have manually turned it off.
Well, they had to manually turn the other one on too.
Exactly. That's really odd. Okay,
So-
let's go on.
Okay, well, that's the heart of the problem, is that they had two different flight paths, the two helicopters.
I got it. Yes, I got it. Yeah. So, and just to make a comment, I saw this airplane body in this story, and that body is really strange. So the plane has broken in half, and the forward opening into the tail of the fuselage. If you go around the other end where the white truck is,
Uh-huh.
the fuselage is filled with dirt, like it scraped it up, but the metal is completely unbent. How does that kind of metal and that kind of craft gouge the earth and not bend?
Well,
This is
yeah.
odd.
The reason I put it on was because I was saying, flight radar the transponders are that bad. And whatever happened to me, I mean, I don't know what happened here, but there's plane crashes. And like, I thought that plane should have been identified and not shot at.
I think the Russian soldiers that actually did the shooting don't have ADS-B. They're tracking using their own radar, not civilian tracking.
Oh.
So they don't get ADS-B. They have a screen right in front of them, and it's got friend and foe, the IFF identifiers on it. And if they don't see the IFF identifier, they assume a bogey. And it just came in over a war zone, and they shot it down.
Okay, I didn't understand that. I just thought, there was an example of something that should have been identified. And so
I agree with you, because I agree that whoever was manning the radar console was insufficiently trained or experienced to determine the flight pattern of a commercial jet from a fighter jet. They just were not trained well.
Okay. Because I thought what happened over my house would have caused a plane crash.
They were almost coincident. They were almost on the same spot. That in civilian aeronautical parlance, as you already know, is a near miss.
It's a very near miss because they've had near misses recently of like 100 feet. And the two helicopters, when the one appeared, it was about 2 miles away. But when it passed the other one, it was very, very close.
That's very interesting. Do you mind if we change topics?
No.
Okay, good. Then Lala and I are.
Oh, this one.
Yeah, Lala and I are experiencers.
Okay.
So, yes, and she's been her whole life. I had some odd things through my childhood, but late in adulthood, I went and visited Chris Bledsoe, and I took it home with me after visiting Chris Bledsoe. So, so we have lots of listeners in both X and YouTube that are experiencers. And so you had all that experience in the Experiencer Research Team. I just wondered if you wanted to tell any stories or share any thoughts.
Just a minute. My phone. Yeah, I've had experiences. Do you want to hear about them?
Yeah, we do. If you don't mind sharing.
Well, I was really lucky. Just a minute. I want to see if I can get a pen to write. Okay. I was really lucky generally in my experiences because I had other witnesses.
Ah, good.
And for 2 for 2 different ones, I had the same witness. So I was very lucky. My first one that I know about was when my sister and I were real young kids. We had never heard of UFOs or anything like that. We were in a farmhouse in Ohio, and in an attic room sleeping. I went to bed. We're not sure about our ages because it was real young and like we had never heard of UFOs, but that was handy in a way because we were allowed to talk about it. And if anybody said this was a UFO, they'd have shut us down. But it was a clear summer day, no storm going on. And my whole family remembered the thing. We went to bed and it was dark. And I woke up and I saw this thing flying around in the bedroom. I didn't know what it was. And I'd never heard of orbs or UFOs or anything at the time I was a kid. She thought she wasn't in school, and I didn't remember if I was in school or not. So we might have been about 6 and 4 years old, or maybe younger than that. Anyway, I saw this thing flying around the room, and I didn't know what it was. It didn't blink. It looked like a piece of real hot iron, and it was pretty small. And I thought, what is that? And at that age, I still noticed that it seemed to know where it was going. The room was dark, but it came toward us several times and toward our heads. And when it flew around the room, it didn't bump into anything. I mean, we knew where the furniture was, and it would fly around, but it didn't bump into anything. It was like it could see. And so I watched it, trying to figure out what it was. And then after it flew around a while, it flew up toward the ceiling. And it was an attic room with walls that came together in the middle of the ceiling. And there was a chandelier in the middle of the ceiling. Well, it flew up to the ceiling. It didn't hit the ceiling or anything. It flew along the ceiling. And then it positioned itself right between the chandelier and the wall. It didn't feel its way around or anything. It seemed to know where they were. It started circling the chandelier. Then after it circled for a while, then it came down in an exact spiral right under it. And then my sister and I just suddenly became absolutely terrified. So just terrified you couldn't believe it. And I didn't know she was awake or anything. She knew I was awake though. And we both ran out of the bedroom, and we were so terrified we fell down the stairs. And then we were so terrified we couldn't get the door open. And we flubbed around with the door for a while. And finally we got the door open, ran to our parents shrieking and screaming. And they said it didn't happen. But if there was just one of us, well, they would have said you dreamed it, and I would have believed it. But there were 2 of us, and we weren't even talking to each other. And we both remembered the same thing. And so it was something that really happened. Mm-hmm. But it was quite a few years before I ever heard of UFOs. But then we both had other sightings after that, and we had another one together quite a few years later. Would you be interested in hearing about it?
Oh, yes, of course.
Okay. Well, at that time, we'd never heard of UFOs, so we told everybody about it because nobody said, that's a UFO, shut up. So our cousins and all kinds of people in our family knew about it, and we talked about it. But then later, we learned we were not supposed to talk about UFOs, and I had another sighting, but I didn't talk about it. But then later, my sister, I was working for the DIA, and so this is kind of like a military sighting, actually, with the security clearances and everything in Washington, D.C. And my sister was in Drew University taking postgraduate courses. And since we were both on that end of the country, we decided to go up and see the New England states. And the last thing we were ever thinking about was UFOs. Wow. So I picked up a couple of coworkers from the DIA, at 6 o'clock one morning and drove up to Drew. And I took pictures of them. I still have the pictures of them and my sister and her dorm and everything. And so I picked her up. And this was 1968. It was before cell phones or anything. And drove up to Boston. Well, I got there and it was still daylight. And I thought, well, we could see some more scenery. And so I went around Boston Outer Belt and came to Route 3 and drove up Route 3 into New Hampshire and took some pictures there. And I didn't know it at the time. It was years later when the internet came by. I found I was kind of in the same places where some of the Hill abduction took place, but I didn't know that then. But I drove back to Boston and we looked for motel rooms and couldn't find anything. Everything seemed to be full. And so we decided to go on and look around the Outer Belt, which back then it was Route 128. And so we drove out, and as we were leaving Boston and going west, we could see this airport south of Boston. It was the Norwood Memorial Airport, and we could see airplanes coming in. They would, have their green and red wing lights on and put their landing lights on and everything, and we could see them coming and going and all that. But down below the airplanes, we could see something that looked like it was following the freeway, Route 95, ahead of us. And we followed the road out, I think it was Route 9, and then turned on 128. And then after a while went on 95 because we were still looking for a place to stay. Well, we saw this thing ahead of us, and it didn't look anything like an airplane. It was a lot lower, and it was blinking. And my sister started saying, "This is a UFO," and I thought she had just flipped. And but I wasn't watching it, and she was. And she said the reason why she thought it was something different was because she said it'd be one place, then it'd be someplace else, and then it'd be someplace else. And she didn't seem to move it from place to place. And so, but I just wasn't paying attention at all because I was driving. And so I thought, I told her she was crazy. And I told her it was a helicopter. In science, and scientists have an explanation for everything. So we continued on Route 95. And when we were sort of across from the airport, east of it, before we got to the airport, there was a woods. And I saw this sphere in the woods. And it was just like a big glass sphere that you could see the inside of it. And there was this light that was in the side of it. It seemed to be going around in spectrums, and it seemed to be blue and red. And it would go through all shades of blue and then all shades of red. I'm not real sure about the colors, but it was going through a spectrum. And I was trying to figure out what on earth that thing could be. And then the inside of the car lit up in green. And I looked at that thing and it wasn't green. And I didn't see green anyplace else. And I couldn't figure out why the inside of the car would be green.
Wow.
So it stayed there a while. And then we continued on. And then my sister started yelling at me and saying, to pull over because the thing's going to go over the freeway. Well, I still thought she was nuts. But she was screaming at me, and so I pulled over. Then I looked to the east, and I saw what looked like a real distant meteor. And I saw that. And then in exactly the same place, this thing came over the trees real low. And it was like maybe submarine shaped or something. It had a row of 7 windows.
Oh, wow.
Square windows. And we could see it real well, just real plain. And a red light on one end and a green light on the other. And it was going perpendicular across our road. Well, at that point, I realized my sister was right and I was wrong. I was ready to point my hand out and say, "See, it's a helicopter." And then it came over the trees and I realized this was not a helicopter. And it made no sound at all. And it was blinking in a pattern. And it was like I'm not sure about this either. It was like the first 3 lights would be on and off, and then all 7, and then the last 4, and then repeat that. But it had some kind of a pattern that it kept following. And the windows were real big, and they were very clear, and they were square. And the thing made no sound whatsoever. And we counted the windows. I mean, we wanted to see if we were seeing the same thing because we couldn't believe it. And how many windows do you count and all that? Well, we counted the same number of windows and things. And you could see the airplanes up above and hear them. And so I was in the DIA working in photography and things, and they didn't have the best, they don't have any cell phones back then. But I had a Polaroid, and I had high-speed film in my trunk or someplace. So I found my camera, and I found the film, and I was trying to get the film in the camera real fast because I thought this is just an amazing picture. I can prove UFOs exist or something. Mm. So I was loading my camera, and a truck driver came over and parked in front of us. And about then, the thing, the truck driver came and parked in front of us, and the truck driver came back, and I thought, well, we'll have another, witness here. And that seemed real good. But the man came, and he asked us what we were doing. And so I pointed at it, and I didn't say UFO. I just acted like it was an airplane and said, what's that? Mm-hmm. Well, he turned around and pointed exactly the opposite direction from where it was, looked exactly the opposite direction, and said, I don't see anything. Then he turned around and faced me again. And so at this time, I was aware that something wasn't right. So he asked me the same question again, what are you doing? And so again, I pointed at it and said, what's that? And I mean, it'd just been over the freeway right before his truck came. And it was a big thing with all these windows and things. And so he turned his head the other way, just exactly the opposite direction, said, I don't see anything. Then he turned around to me, and he gave me some gesture that I'm not totally sure of. I think he just pointed at his head, something like that, which to me insinuated that he was telling me I was crazy or that I didn't see it. He went back to his truck. Well, I was trying to get the picture, and it was just a perfect, beautiful, lovely picture. I could have got that enhanced it, later when they developed that and things. But anyway, so he went back to his truck, and I didn't realize at the time, I didn't realize it until years later when my sister wrote an independent write-up of it too. But she said that it took me a long time to get my camera out and things. And she said then that during this time that the object had suddenly gone someplace else. Well, I didn't realize that because I was talking to the truck driver. And so then I went to take the picture, and the thing was a long ways away. And I was afraid of getting, it was a time exposure. And so I was afraid of getting car lights in my photography. And so there was a hill, and I ran up the hill, and fortunately it was bald on top. And so I aimed at my camera at it. And at that time I could just see one point. I couldn't see the seven windows because it was too far away. And so I took 5 pictures and came back and pulled each time I pulled the thing out of the Polaroid, and one of the pictures turned out. But anyway, then the thing had gone to the airport, and it was circling the airport. And it was,
oh my God.
Fine. It was going, if I had the internet back then, I would have found out more about this, but it was going, when it went south to north in a half circle, it would blink its lights on twice, then it would be exactly north. And it would go from north to south so fast you couldn't see it. You just knew it was there. Mm-hmm. And it was just kept circling the airport like that. Well, it was a little bit, it was west of us, but a little bit north. And I thought it had been going south, but I thought now it's north of us, and I'll go down the freeway and turn around and come back because I wanted this picture. And my sister couldn't figure out why the thing was empty. I mean, she'd just been staring at it, trying to figure out why there was nobody in it. And so anyway, I got on the freeway, and the truck driver was sitting there watching us. He got right in behind me, turned these bright lights on, which blinded me, and started chasing us. And if I pulled over one way or the other, he did the same thing. He just kept right on my bumper. And I was afraid we were going to get killed. I didn't know what he was doing or anything else. If I slowed down, he did. So he's definitely following us. He wasn't trying to get around or anything. And so anyway, I decided to find another intersection as we were going down through intersections. And from the left-hand lane, I decided to just at the last minute swerve off on an intersection. And I was hoping, losing, but if somebody had been coming up on the right-hand side of the road, we would have had a real bad accident. But I did that, and I got rid of him. And so we were coming back. And as we came back about even with the airport, the thing started flying northwest. And so I followed up Route 95, and I came to that green thing, to that ball of light, and the inside of the car turned green again. And then I followed more roads and finally got on this horrible road of houses that were miles apart from each other and bumps, and it was a gravel road. And the thing, we could still follow it, and it was low and slow, but it was just too fast for me to follow in the car without tearing the car up. And so I just had to turn around and go back. And so we went back, and I stayed because I was trying to wait for these men that had been with me, and they never showed up. And so finally late, I drove back to Washington, D.C. And then after that night, I had a poltergeist experience.
Really?
And then everything went back to normal, and I was really worried about going to work the next day, but I did. And I came back after that, and I wrote everything up.
What was your poltergeist experience that you had? Can you talk about it?
Yeah. I went to bed, and it was dark. And I kept hearing somebody walking in my room. And there was a little bit of light coming through the trees in the window. I couldn't see anybody. And if it got close to my bed, I tried to feel somebody. I was just absolutely terrified.
Oh.
But I could just hear like a man's footsteps in the room. And then my alarm went off. And I thought it was morning, and I got up. And then I realized it was dark. And I looked at the clock, and my alarm, which would normally be set about 6 or something, was set at 1:30. And so anyway, it was electric alarm clock. And so the knob that you turn it with was real hard to turn. And I normally used pliers to turn it, but I, approximately turned it and went back to bed. And I went to sleep even though I was terrified. Then the alarm went off again, and it was 2:30. And at that time, I got up and put a chair against the door, and I was terrified, and I went back to sleep. Well, then my alarm went off at 3:30, 4:30, and 5:30. And at 5:30, I was sitting, I started to get up, and I was thinking, I'm just going crazy. I never heard of poltergeist. I didn't know what was going on. And so I thought, if I'm crazy, I'm going to be in trouble at work because I have all these clearances. I mean, I had, the top secret, above top secret, and SCI and everything else clearances. And I thought, I'm going to be in trouble. And so I was just rehearsing ways to pass myself off as not being crazy and not talk to anybody at work. And, and then my toothbrush, for somehow, just flew across the room and hit the wall. And then I continued getting up and went to work, and everything was normal.
Well, you got to keep moving.
Yeah.
I wonder if a lot of maybe alien activity people actually think it's poltergeist stuff. Because I just always assumed it was ghosts, but we don't know what's going on. That's interesting, actually, and the truck driver is really interesting. And our friend Marty said he doesn't think that was a real truck driver.
And Marty and I agree.
Yeah.
That was not a real truck
That was
driver.
weird.
Well, it took me years and years and years to figure that out. And my sister didn't realize she'd written anything. But just 2 years ago, she found a letter she'd written to my mother that day it happened. So we both had written up something that very day it happened. But, and so I asked her, did you remember talking to a truck driver? And I thought all along that she'd seen the truck driver and that he was a real person, or I wondered, I got crazy. But then she said she hadn't seen him. I mean, she had seen him chase us and she'd seen him drive, but she hadn't seen him talk to me, or she forgot about it. And at that point, I thought, it was pretty late, but I thought maybe the truck driver isn't real. That it had either been put in my mind or had been deleted from her mind.
Right.
Wow.
That's awesome. I mean, I'm sorry it happened, but that's very interesting.
That's a great story, Irena. So yeah, it could be anything. It could be a man in black, or a person on the ground working with whatever was flying, and you just don't know. Wow, that's amazing. But it had to be really weird for him to say, "Oh, I'm looking, I don't see it," and point in the opposite direction.
Oh my God, I was so pissed.
He did it twice.
Yeah.
I mean, like it was really making his point that, he looked in absolutely the wrong direction, just exactly opposite, and said, I don't see anything.
How quickly these things happen. It's so strange because you grow up to think the world's normal, and then we go through these things, and we're being watched. I mean, you can't think otherwise if something happens that quickly to derail you from seeing what you're seeing. It's interesting.
She was seeing UFOs in her yard for years before she knew what a UFO was. She only knew what a UFO was because her dad watched a UFO movie.
Well, we had no idea what it was when we saw that first one either, and it was in a bedroom with us.
I figured out this stuff was truly real, even though I'd had experiences with Chris Bledsoe. When I go home, I'm sitting in my living room. I'm in my lounge chair, folding chair, and I'm comfy watching the news. And this white orb stands up in the room and wiggles and wiggles and over the couch. And I went, okay, I see you. And it wiggled a little bit and disappeared. Then later on a different day, I had 3 orbs in the front yard in an equilateral triangle going up and down like that in front of my security camera. So even though it was going up and down in a weird way, I went, maybe that's bugs and the camera's lighting them up. So I'm going to put it on long record and go out and around and see if I could see them. Because if I could see them, it wasn't IR because I can't see IR. So I went around the corner. There they were doing this, glowing. And when they noticed me, boom, they took off straight up.
Huh.
So, and then my poltergeist thing in there was I'm in my bed. It's late at night. I don't even remember what time it was, but anyway, something woke me up and I could see a figure in the corner of the bedroom. Now, zero fear, nothing. I was curious. What is this? And it walks toward me, and it's a teenage boy, 14 or 15 years old. And it looks at me, takes me in, and disappears. So I thought I was dreaming, but by then we had become friends. And I had this, I don't know, intuition. I don't know what it was. I said, do you have a picture of your dad when he was young? She took out a picture of his dad when he was young, and it was him.
Huh.
I mean, what do you do with those kinds of experiences, Irena? You just write them down in a book and hope you figure out why one day.
Well, with that thing, for example, with my flight radar, I mean, I think that's dangerous. There's, airplanes and everything else that depend on transponders and all that.
Right. Oh yeah.
But even with the thing we saw, it was flying over an airport, and if they had the internet, I'd check the airport, but it was way before the internet and before you could check anything like that.
Are you doing okay?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Because we're going to be selfish. This wasn't long enough, so we're going to go a little bit longer than usual.
Is that okay?
Oh, okay.
Is that okay with you?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Not long. No,
Not long, but enough. You got a question. I know you do.
Yeah. I was wondering if you think that certain bloodlines, or does it go through families, passed down, that certain people get visited more often or get abducted more often? Because the conspiracy about the O negative blood or the RH negative blood. How do you feel about all that?
Well, I think it ought to be studied, and I know somebody that's trying to get, like Ancestry.com or something like that, data of people's DNA. Although, if you want to do a real study, I think you'd need a lot of money to do it, but she's trying to do it on her own.
Ooh.
But I think it would be real interesting to take people that have, experiences and study their ancestors from way back and see if they have common ancestors with other people that, have those experiences.
Maybe if the individuals care enough about all of that kind of thing, they could be talked into getting their ancestry.
Yeah. I think it would be a pretty big project because a lot of people wouldn't cooperate, and it takes money to get your DNA tested and all that, although it's not real expensive. But I've often thought about that would be an excellent idea to see. But, all races and all kinds of people have the experiences. So it'd have to, if there was something in the bloodline, it'd have to go way back.
Yeah, I'm worried about 23andMe and others, because 23andMe has found out that a business built on one-time expenditure by customers is not a good business. And it looks to me like they're shutting down.
Yeah, it seems like I'm on Ancestry.com. And, my sister obviously saw something too. But then I found out that because the relatives on both sides had some experiences, but nobody ever talked about them because there's so much harassment.
Yeah,
but I found out, yeah.
My other question is, when you're talking about seeing the craft with your sister, before you saw the craft, you saw a shooting it looked like a shooting star. Do you remember if that was a reddish or orange color, or do you remember the color of that?
I think it was white. I'm not sure. I mean, it's a long time past, but I was thinking it was way off in the distance.
I just think it's interesting because the one time I actually saw a craft very close to where I saw the detail. Before I saw the craft, I thought it was like red. Shooting stars or meteorites. There were like 3 of them passed over my car to where it made me nervous. And it didn't click until you said something. I was like, oh, okay, maybe this is a thing where maybe they're little smaller crafts going off, or there's, I don't know why, but I thought that was interesting.
The issue with the meteor, of course, is it's coming in from outer space and striking our atmosphere. And when it hits the atmosphere, especially the first part of it, its color is determined by its temperature. And so it's white hot.
Well, this wasn't.
So when it slows down, you start seeing its chemical signature and it'll have colors.
Well, I have 2 comments on that. One is that I found another incident. There was this town named Sharon that was some distance away, and people in Sharon had had a sighting a couple of years before we did. And it was just exactly like what we saw. These people were standing out in the field watching, and they saw a meteor way off in the distance, the same direction I saw it. And then this object came by, and it was just exactly what we saw. And then there's I read the book Buff Ledge by Walter Webb, and he talked about this sighting at a girls' camp that these two counselors were out watching, and they saw this thing come in and a beam aimed at them, and then they had an abduction. And some of them saw something like a meteor come in too. It's like, and also I forgot, I left a part out, and that was when we pulled over, and about the time I saw the meteor, from my sister's write-up, and what she said was is that the object shone a beam of light in the car, and she said it was a very strange light. And I wondered if maybe when I didn't see it shoot a beam of light, but she was, on the other side of the car, and if the car lit up, she would have seen it and I wouldn't have. But I wondered if it showed a beam of light, maybe that influenced my mind to see the meteor or something.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting.
So in all of your ERT cases, besides your own, what was the most interesting case? Keep it anonymized, of course, but what was the most interesting case you investigated?
Well, the most interesting case was one, it wasn't an ERE at all. It was in Ohio, and it was, I forget, it was in early 1990s. And it was these people that lived kind of on a farm. It was called close to Logan, Ohio. And they had a cornfield, and they saw these blinking red lights flying around the cornfield. Well, this might not be too odd, except that they just stayed there. They flew around and blinked. And so these people called the airports, including Wright-Patterson Airport and other airports. They called the police. They called the TV station and everything else, and things were still flying around. So the police came out and investigated, looked at them, and said, well, they don't know what they are. The airports and the TV knew about it. There was an example of one flew up and then somehow an airplane came and began flying a grid over it while that was going on. And one of them flew up and followed a grid. Another one flew down and followed a car. And it was really odd because it was investigated. The police came out and looked, and it just kept on. And, airplanes were watching everything else. And then this other person and several other people came out and did it and investigated, but another person came out and came out and investigated it later. And when we left that night, there had another sighting of the things flying around. This time they got pictures of them, not very good though. And then many years later, right to the date, I had another sighting of blinking lights. And so the whole thing was pretty weird.
I've never even heard of that. That's amazing. Hello.
That's amazing. So are you still involved at all in MUFON, or is that past?
No, I'm still involved.
Oh, great. What are you doing now?
What I'm most involved in was Philip Mantle, and we have this new book out.
Oh, yes. Well, don't let me forget that. I forgot you and Philip had a new book out, Beyond Reasonable. Yeah. And I met them. I grew up in Southwest Alabama, and not long after it happened, Mr. Curious had to go off, and I met them and talked to them, and they were as gentle and kind. One of them was very troubled. The older one, Charlie, he was just matter of fact. That was interesting. But then of course I grew up and lost touch with them. I am so happy you and Philip covered that story again.
Well, we are too, because there's just a vast amount of information, and we keep, more shows up all the time. And we think it's the best documented of any sighting ever, because
I think it is.
And it was sort of, the people were harassed and everything. And at first, Mississippi, kind of poor state, and they were presented as drunks, which they weren't. And, it was really looked down on. But now it's becoming, I think, a lot more reputable.
Well, after both Parker and Hickson passed away, other witnesses decided to come forward.
Well, there were a lot of other witnesses when that happened that night. The police, I forget what he's called, that was taking the phone calls, the police duty officer or something, said that he received about 50 phone calls that night of people seeing something weird and reporting it. So there were a lot of other witnesses of the craft, and we later turned up 2 people that apparently saw the abduction too.
They saw the weird 3-pointed head robots or whatever they were?
They were on the other side of the river, and they saw that going on. And then several years later, one of them said, yeah, we'd been abducted too.
Oh my goodness.
They reported an abduction the same time and place.
Wow.
Yeah, Gulfport is quite a busy port. That's a beautiful spot. And they work not far from there. And I am so glad that story is getting the attention it is due.
I am too.
In her book.
Where can they find the book?
Oh, on Amazon, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Under my name.
Yeah, no, and I will put the book in the show notes along with everything else. A link to the Amazon.
Great.
Yeah. Because, I mean, you and your partner in that book are both really well-known investigators. And Matt, of course, is one of the best-known investigators in all of Europe.
Well, he's really good. He's just like Sherlock Holmes. He, seems to find everything. Just like he's a walking microscope or something.
He is a dogged, and
yeah.
I don't want to say a name, but I will say I'll give you enough that you can identify the person. He got on the wrong side of a UFO investigator, in quotes, who insisted that they were a high-ranking person in a Ministry of Defense and were head of the UFO desk. And Philip got the actual paper that shows he was a lowly clerk.
Mm-hmm.
Philip did a great job.
He didn't have a whole lot of impact, unfortunately, though.
No, it's okay. He has impact on me because I listened.
Good. Yeah, he's really a good investigator. I mean, just amazing investigator.
Have you had many investigations of people with implants?
Oh, good question.
No, I haven't done too much on that. Actually, I haven't done anything on it. So, I may have an implant for all I know, because the doctor found something in my leg once, but I didn't pay attention to it. So,
sounds like it. Which leg?
My left leg.
Yeah, there you go.
I have, they have it online from the hospital, and the MRI and everything online. But, I was lucky to get, it paid for, so I didn't go any further with anything.
Okay. Can you describe it?
No, they just said, they just described that I had an object in my leg, and they said they had a name for it and where it was and that sort of thing, but, and it was supposed to be on the x-rays, and they had the x-rays, but I didn't pursue it any. Maybe I should, but I probably should.
I think maybe you might want to. I have one in my left leg. It's the upper outer part. So kind of by, if you had a low pocket area, it'd be in your pants. It would be that area. I found out 20 some years ago, and it's the size of a piece of rice. So when you said left leg, I was like, oh crap, you know. It's interesting.
But that seems to be the most common place for one in a leg. For whatever reason. That, and I took an RF field strength meter, made sure that all of my mini RF devices were turned off, and found that she is beaconing from right behind her forehead. Pulsed transmissions.
Well, I have the scoop thing.
And she has a scoop mark right here where with no memory of any kind of incident.
I think a lot of people that have a lot of sightings or abductions or missing time, I think they do have implants. And most of us just don't even find out. We never find out. Only by accident, like you and I find out. So I just think it's interesting.
So just let me say quickly, I always thought, I can't understand why they would do that. I just don't get it. But then I got to be 58 or 59 years, no, 62 years old. I had an idea. I started a company. The company is called Hawkeye 360, and it has satellites in orbit. And these satellites use a brand new technique, using multiple satellites to do one observation, for finding transmitters on the ground from orbit. And it can find very weak transmitters like one of these beacons.
Wow. Do you have maps and things of it?
Yeah, I do, but except now they are full-time in business. They've been adopted by the National Reconnaissance Office as part of the national constellation. And so it's hard to get anything out of them. But that was I was so shocked when I did the math that showed, ooh, I can find these beacons that people are walking around with.
Wow. That would be neat.
It's pretty neat. Anyway, this is not about me. It's about you. So, got any other great stories?
I probably do, but I probably don't have time. So.
Okay.
We'll have to have it.
Please, Irene, come back.
Oh, thank you very much for having me. This is.
No, we want you to come back because this is not enough. There's too much in your background and other things that we want to talk about, and we will have you back soon.
Oh, great. Thank you.
And everyone, thank you for being here tonight. It's been a great pleasure having Dr. Irene Scott on. Go read her bio and give me go give me a minute, and I'm going to add all these books to her bio, and please check them out, especially the most recent one with Philip Mantle on the Hickson Parker Gulfport abduction.
Pascagoula.
Pascagoula.
Everybody gets it mixed up.
Yeah, no, that's okay. Pascagoula. Yeah. Yes.
It's not Pensacola, it's Pascagoula.
I've been to Gulfport so many times, it's easy to mix it up with Pascagoula. Anyway, thank you all for being here. It was great, and we hope to see you again soon.
Thank you, Irene.
Well, thank you.